Welcome to a deep dive, everybody. Ever thought about what it takes to be a sheet metal worker?
It's definitely a career path that often flies under the radar, but it's one that's crucial to how our world gets built.
We're going to dig into that today using some sources you sent us. Blueprints, career guides, even interview tips. Let's piece it all together.
Sounds like a plan. It's more than just bending metal, that's for sure. You'll see the career path has just as many sides as the materials.
Exactly. So, what's the deal with sheet metal work? What do these workers actually DO all day?
Well, think about the duct systems inside buildings. Those are meticulously put together by sheet metal workers. They're also the ones keeping the elements out with roofs and gutters, especially with more people wanting energy-efficient buildings.
Shaping the skyline one building at a time. But what's a normal day actually like for a sheet metal worker? Our sources say it can be pretty tough, right?
Yeah, it's definitely not your typical 9 to 5. Picture yourself, sometimes outdoors in all kinds of weather, sometimes inside, moving big sheets of metal around, and using both strength A&D precision to get them ready for installation.
Our sources mention journeyman and master sheet metal worker. It's like there's ranks in this field. What's that about?
You got it. It's a skilled trade, so it has its own system. You usually start as an apprentice, learning the basics. Then, if you're good and you put in the time, you move up to journeyman.
So you're basically leveling up, video game style, but with real-life skills. What about becoming a master? What makes them stand out?
They're like the gurus. Years of experience under their belts, usually mentoring newer workers in charge of the big, complicated projects. They know the technical stuff inside and out, but also the artistic side of working with metal.
Wow, so much more than meets the eye. Our sources also mention different kinds of sheet metal work. I was surprised it wasn't just one thing.
Exactly. Just like other skilled trades, there's a bunch of ways to go. Architectural sheet metal work, for example.
That one caught my attention. What's that all about?
They're the ones taking an architect's idea and making it a reality, usually using specific metals and techniques. Think fancy metal panels, decorative touches, those awesome metal roofs that look like slate or tile.
Like they're bringing art into the industrial world.
Exactly. And don't forget the problem solving. On a job site, things don't always go as planned. So being able to think on your feet and come up with solutions, that's super important.
It's like architectural origami, but with metal.
That's a great way to put it. You need that ability to think about space, be creative, and have the technical skills to make it all come together.
So we've talked about what the work is like, how your career can grow, and all the different specialties. But what's the big picture? Is this career path a good idea? What are the pros and cons?
That's where those lists you sent us come in. And I got to say, they give a pretty balanced view.
Right. That's what struck me too.
So on the plus side, it's a stable career, and you can earn good money. Our sources say skilled sheet metal workers are always in demand.
Yeah, and working with your hands, creating something from start to finish, that's got to be rewarding.
Absolutely. But just like any job, there are some downsides.
Like the physical part, we already touched on that.
Yep, and the sources mention other risks. Working up high, loud noises, cuts, and burns.
Definitely a job where you got to be alert and put safety first.
100%. And while it's usually easy to find work, how far you can move up depends on what you specialize in and where you're located.
So thinking about what's important to you is key then.
Totally. Do the good things outweigh the risks? Does this type of work match your personality?
Makes you think, is this the right fit for me?
Exactly. If you like fast-paced work, using your hands, figuring things out as you go, this might be your thing.
But if you'd rather be in an office 9 to 5, this might not be the right environment.
It all comes down to finding a career that you enjoy and are good at.
Totally. Okay, let's talk about actually landing that sheet metal worker job. You sent us some info on interviews, and using RoleCatcher to practice answering questions specific to this field. That's smart.
It really helps you get ready. You get to practice explaining what you know and what you've done in a way that employers want to hear.
Like one of the questions our sources mention, can you describe your experience with sheet metal fabrication? That one's got to be important, right?
Oh, for sure. That's where you talk about different types of metal, the tools you're good with, projects you've worked on. It's all about showing you can do the work.
How do you ensure that your work meets all safety and quality standards? I bet that's another big one.
Definitely. Safety is a huge deal in this job, and employers need to know that you take it seriously, that you're careful.
So more than just knowing the rules, you have to show you really get it, that you'll follow those standards.
Exactly. You have to show that safety and quality are always your top priorities.
It's kind of interesting how even in a hands-on job like this, Those other qualities like paying attention to detail and having a good work ethic matter a lot.
They matter a ton. They show you're professional, that you care about your work, and that people can count on you.
And speaking of being reliable, our sources talk a lot about teamwork and communication, which seems kind of surprising in a job where you're often working alone.
Yeah, you'd think that, right. But even if you're focused on your own tasks a lot of the time, you're still part of a team on a construction site.
So being able to talk to your coworkers clearly, follow instructions, and work together, that's all super important.
For sure. If someone messes up what they're saying, it could cost a lot of money to fix, or someone could even get hurt.
So being able to explain yourself and really listen to others is crucial.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter how skilled you are with your hands. If you can't communicate, it'll hold you back.
It makes you realize good communication is key in any job.
Totally. It's the foundation of a good and productive workplace.
We've talked about skills, experience, how to ace an interview, but there's one more thing the sources say is a MST,
Yeah, and what's that?
passion.
Ah, yes. That's what separates those who simply work with metal from those who truly love what they do.
It's about more than just getting the job, right? It's got to be something you're excited about.
Yeah, a career that uses your skills, A&D, lets you be creative to build something real and lasting.
Totally. Speaking of building something lasting, let's dive into building a career in sheet metal work. We talked about apprentices, journeymen, and masters before. What's that whole journey like?
The sources lay out a clear path. It starts with that apprenticeship, where you're getting hands-on experience with more experienced people showing you the ropes.
Like a super hands-on education. You're learning on the job from the ground up.
Exactly. It's not just reading about it, you're doing it day after day.
And that experience must be so valuable.
Totally. It's how you really learn those skills, get better, and build the confidence to take on tougher projects.
Okay, so you've finished your apprenticeship, you're officially a journeyman. What's next?
Well, as a journeyman, you've got more freedom and more responsibility. You're not just helping anymore, you're running projects on your own, making the tough calls, and even teaching the apprentices.
That's a big jump.
It is. And each project you finish, you're adding to your skills, your knowledge, and your reputation in the field.
Sounds like it's all about constantly learning and growing.
You got it. And for those who really love what they do and want to reach the very top, there's becoming a master sheet metal worker.
We mentioned that a bit ago, but what does it take to actually get to that level?
It's not easy, that's for sure. It takes years of practice, always learning new things, and deeply understanding both the technical and creative sides of the work.
So it's more than just being good with your hands?
Absolutely. A master can see the finished product in their mind before even starting. They can spot problems before they happen and come up with solutions that are smart and look good.
Wow, like a sixth sense for metalwork.
That's a great way to put it. They've been doing it so long, it's almost like an extension of themselves.
It's kind of inspiring how much there is to this job, how rewarding it can be if you're willing to work for it.
I agree. It shows how much skill, dedication, and even artistry goes into shaping the world around us, one piece of metal at a time.
And as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into sheet metal work, I'm amazed at how much we've learned.
It's been quite a journey, that's for sure.
It has. We talked about what it's really like to be a sheet metal worker, the special skills you need, how your career can grow, the good A&D, the bad, and just how important passion and dedication are.
We've covered a lot of ground, that's for sure.
I think our listeners are going away with a much better idea of what it takes to make it in this field, don't you?
I hope so. It's challenging, but also incredibly rewarding.
Totally. But before we move on, I want to leave our listener with something to think about.
Go for it. What's on your mind?
We talked about the practical stuff, the skills, all that, but there's one more thing I think is worth considering.
Okay, I'm listening. What is it?
The artistry of it all.
Ah, yes. People forget that part. They just think about the practical side of it.
Exactly. Because while sheet metal work is about being precise and getting the job done right, there's also a creative side to it.
Taking something raw and turning it into something useful.
Yeah.
A&D beautiful.
Finding those solutions that are both practical A&D look amazing.
It's about leaving your mark on the world in a way that lasts and honestly can be stunning.
That's a great point. So, to our listeners, as you continue to explore this line of work, I want you to ask yourselves,
Yes.
could sheet metal work be that perfect mix of using your head A&D, your hands, creating something useful A&D beautiful that you've been looking for?
That's a great question and one worth thinking about.
It is. And with that, we're going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back to keep this deep dive going. All right, welcome back, everybody. We're in the middle of a deep dive into the world of sheet metal work.
And before the break, we were talking about how important passion is in this field.
Right, that genuine excitement for what you're doing. But there's another aspect we should talk about, the actual path your career takes.
Yeah, we touched on apprentices, journeymen, and masters, but let's break those down a bit more.
Sounds good. So, starting with apprenticeships, our sources describe it as a really hands-on learning experience, with experienced workers guiding you.
That's learning by doing, which is so important in a trade. You're not just reading about techniques, you're putting them into practice every day.
And that hands-on experience must be so valuable when it comes to mastering those intricate skills.
Absolutely. It's how you develop your skills, build your confidence, and eventually take on more challenging projects independently.
So let's say you've completed your apprenticeship, you're now a journeyman. What changes?
Well, as a journeyman, you've got more independence, more responsibility. You're not just assisting anymore. You're leading projects, making decisions, and even mentoring those new apprentices.
It's a whole new level of expertise.
Exactly. And with each project you complete, you're gaining more experience, knowledge, and building a solid reputation in the field.
It's a continuous journey of learning and growth, isn't it?
It really is. And then, for those who are truly passionate and want to reach the very top of their field, there's the title of Master Sheet Metal Worker.
We've mentioned that title a few times, but what does it really take to earn the title Master?
It's not something that happens overnight. It takes years of dedication, constant learning, and a deep understanding of both the technical and artistic sides of the work.
So it's more than just being technically skilled.
Absolutely. A master can almost visualize the finished product before they even start working. They can anticipate problems and come up with creative solutions on the spot.
It's like they have a sixth sense for metalwork.
You could say that they've honed their craft to the point where it's almost an instinct.
It's really incredible when you think about it.
It is.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show how much skill and dedication goes into shaping the world around us, often in ways we don't even realize.
That's a great point. So, for our listeners who are considering this career path, I think it's important to remember that it's more than just a job.
It's a craft, a skill, and for some, it's even an art form.
Exactly. And speaking of art, you know what else our sources mentioned that I found really interesting?
That's that.
They talked about the artistry involved in sheet metal work, which I admit I hadn't really considered before.
Right. You don't always think of it that way, but it's true.
Yeah, we tend to focus on the practical side, the functionality of it all, but there's a definite creative element to it as well.
Absolutely. Taking a flat sheet of metal and transforming it into something not only functional, but also visually appealing, that takes skill and creativity.
It's like architectural origami, like we were talking about before.
Exactly. It's about finding elegant solutions to complex problems, and those solutions can be surprisingly beautiful.
So for anyone listening who's drawn to both the technical and artistic sides of things, sheet metal work might be the perfect fit.
I think so too. It's a field where you can really use both your head and your hands to create something special.
So it's not just about practicality, it's about making something both functional and beautiful.
Exactly. Think about those amazing buildings with intricate metalwork. It's both structural and a work of art.
It's like that saying, form follows function, but in this case, they go hand in hand.
I like that. And it's something to keep in mind for anyone thinking about this career. You're not just building something, you're creating something that will last.
Absolutely. Well, I think we've hammered home the point that sheet metal work is pretty darn cool. It's challenging, rewarding, and even has that artistic side we talked about.
I agree. It's been great diving into this with you.
Likewise. And for our listeners, if this deep dive has sparked your interest, don't stop here. Check out those resources we mentioned. Maybe give RoleCatcher a try for practicing those interview questions.
Yeah, get out there and see where this path leads you.
Couldn't say it better myself. And on that note, until next time, keep those minds curious and those career goals soaring.